Hello everyone, in this video we'll talk about GitHub. If you want to build any project, you need to learn GitHub because GitHub is a place where you put all your code, okay? And it's not just about putting your code actually, it's more than that, it's about collaboration as well. For example, if there are two people who are working on some open source project or some project where multiple people are working, like for example the company that you will be joining or you have joined, right? There what will happen is you have to make sure that everybody is in sync with the code, and that is why GitHub is used. Because for example, there is person one who wrote some code that third person should see, right? So that's what it is about basically. Okay, so everybody, like P1 it is, P2 is it is, and it is called P3. So there are three people, they all can see each other's code. There is P1, there is P2, and there is P3, and they all can see each other's code. One more thing into it, for example, if person one push some code to GitHub, it creates a version out of it. For example, V1 it created, then the same person pushed some next code, and then version got created with V1.1, correct? And it keeps on happening. Now if you want to go from V1 to V1.1 or V1.1 to V1, both the cases are possible. Why it is possible? It's possible because GitHub has all the versions of your code. It's more like a game, you can say, where the moment you save the game, right, it has your data, and if you exit game and come back later on, you can start from there only, right? And you can also go in time, which means like if you want to know what code you have written 2 years back, 1 year back in a particular repository means like a folder, okay, then you can see that code as well. So to build any project, our recommendation would be to learn GitHub as well, because without GitHub your development journey is of no use. You need to learn and understand it, correct? Okay, so this is what GitHub is about. Basically what we do in GitHub is we create a GitHub profile first, okay, then we install GitHub in our system. Git is like a version controlling system, okay, it's called version controlling system. It controls the version. It is more like a software, you can say. And GitHub is a place where all your code goes. Then you will create your first repository on GitHub repo. In short, we call it repo. Now you'll connect that repo to your system, local machine. Now let me explain this process to you, okay? It should not be tricky to understand. Basically, let's take a look at this. There is GitHub and there is you. There is your laptop and there is your GitHub. Now, if you do something on GitHub, your laptop will not know. And if you do something on laptop, GitHub will not know. That is very common sense scenario, correct? What we should do now is, we should basically connect these two things. We say that if we create a repo here, it should be visible here. Then we do something like cloning. It's called cloning. So we clone that repo into our system. Okay, there is one way of cloning, or there is one way of adding a link as well. Yeah, this is called cloning. You basically clone whatever the code that you see on GitHub. You can copy that code into your local system using clone. Now you make some changes into it, then you come back again and push the code into it. So it is called pushing the code to GitHub, correct? This is what pushing means. When you push your code, you also need to define what you are pushing. So there is something called commit. Commit technically means you need to tell GitHub what you are trying to push so that you can remember it later on as well, right? That's the basic scenario. And once you push, you can see the code in GitHub as well, right? In here. So this is the simple scenario that we follow. And in general, what we do is we basically start by creating a repository. Okay, we start by creating a repository first on GitHub. Okay, then we clone that repo into our system. Then we start pushing things from here to here, like this, getting as well. So this is your create a repo. The moment you start building the project, you create a repo on GitHub first, then you clone the repo. Just in case you have some code that you want to push. So how will you do that? What you can do is you can create a repo first. It gives you a URL. There are three ways to get a URL. One way is HTTPS, okay, one way is SSH, and third way is command line of GitHub. Okay, there are three ways to do that. We usually follow the first one, SSH one. So it gives you a URL. Okay, it gives you a GitHub URL, GitHub repo URL. Okay, and that URL you need to add into your local system. This is your local system. Local machine, we can say your laptop is your local machine only, right? It's nothing fancy here. Yeah, this is your GitHub. You put your URL into local machine, and that is how you get connected to it. Now when it pushes into this URL, right, it also checks if you are authorized to do that. For example, if I give you my GitHub URL, right, GitHub repo URL, can you push into it? No. Why? Because you are not authorized to do that. You don't have any access to do that. But in this case where you have access, you can push directly to GitHub, right? That's what pushing means. So to summarize this whole thing, right, what we do is we basically start by creating a repo, then we clone that repo into to a local machine, when you clone, you don't have to do this step because cloning always get connected to your folder only. Correct. And then you can push your code like this only. That's so. You need to understand this part only, that your GitHub is different, your laptop is different. You need to connect them to do something about it. If you want to push your code from local to GitHub, you need to connect them. If you want to take clone from GitHub to your local machine, you need to clone them. You need to connect them. Okay. The last part that we talk about is this. Every time we push a code, we follow 3 steps. One is GitHub add dot. Dot means it will add all the updated files. Updated means whatever you have modified so far, it will update. Okay, it will update that file. Now let's talk about how to push on GitHub. To push on GitHub, we follow 3 steps. First step is git add and then add files, file names. Okay, so we add the file names which we want to push to GitHub. In many cases, we want to push all the files, but in many cases as well, we don't want to push some files that are having secret password or something like it, right? So we avoid them. And yes, you can read about it more. But just in case if you don't want to do this much, then what you can do, you can simply do git add dot. Dot means it will push all the, dot means it will add all the files. Now what does add mean? Add technically means it is ready for commit, ready for committing. It's more like, if you understand, it's more like rocket. So you put your satellites into rocket, right? So this is what it is about. Second thing that you do here is git commit -m and then message. Your message goes into this quotes, correct? Now why we use this commit? We use this commit to identify what did we push in this particular thing, committing. So this is what we are doing. We are committing, okay? We are committing to GitHub that we want to push this code. It is ready for launch. It is more like a ready for launch, ready for push, we will say. Okay, this is what ready for push. Third one would be git push origin branch name. So origin is by default name that we give. Okay, if you have only one repository connected to one folder, you don't have to worry about this. It is called origin by default. This is how it is. And this is your branch name. Branch name is your branch where you are pushing your code. Okay, you can read about branching. How does it work? Let me give you a brief about this. So branching is basically like, for example, you are working on your main feature. This is your production branch. Okay, where your whole live code goes into it. Then you want to build a feature into it. Then you will create something here, and this your production branch is like this only. And once your feature is ready, you merge that code into it. You merge that code into this at this point. Okay, and this is what branching means. Branching means creating multiple versions of something. And the moment you push it, code is pushed. You can see the code is getting pushed. If you don't understand any part into it, you can always look into how it is done. Okay, you can use ChatGPT. You can simply ask questions to Google as well. Both things are fine. But before you go ahead and do anything, let's understand how is it working. You can start building things. See you in next video.